Hello and welcome back to the Fantasy Injury Team podcast. We are the Fit Team. I'm your host, Joe D'Amico. On today's episode, we're going to guide you through quarterbacks, more specifically, quarterbacks coming off major injuries from this past season. Can you trust them? Are they fully healthy? What kind of fantasy production can you expect from them? And most importantly, where should you draft them? Should you draft them? We answer all these burning questions on today's show. As with me, as always, is my really good friend, the doctor of physical therapy, Tom Christ. Tom, you ready to have some fun? What's up?
I'm ready. I'm back in the States, back from Canada, Had a great time, and I'm ready to talk some quarterbacks, ready to talk some injuries. We got our good friend Zach here as well, who I'm sure you're about to introduce, Joe.
I sure am. Had some questions about Canada. We'll hold off for one moment on them. We'll bring Zach in. Zach, welcome back. Zach Hyduk, he is really a great guest to have, super knowledgeable. He's going to tell us a lot about the quarterbacks today. So he's actually the host of 32 Beat Writers podcast. It's called 32 Beat Beyond the Tweets. You could follow him at Hyduk Zachary. That's Hiduk Zachary with an H, not with a K. Zach, what's up, brother? Happy to have you back.
Hey, not too much. I'm glad to be back on. It was good to talk with you guys last time, and I'm glad that I have you fooled that I'm knowledgeable. So if we could fool everybody else, we'll keep going.
You sounded good, and our founder and CEO, Dr. Tom Christ, said we need to get him back, and I said absolutely. But Tom, real quick, tell us more about Canada. You good times up there? A little hiking, a little action. What'd you do up there?
Yeah, and I drove up to Montreal, which, by the way, is a fabulous city. If you haven't been, you got to go. It is beautiful. It's very walkable. The architecture is really great. It's super clean. I mean, this time of the year is when you want to go, July and August. It gets a little chilly in the winter there. Yeah, it was really cool. Did some hiking, a lot of walking around, biking. I went on a boat. They were having the Montreal Jazz Festival, which was like a 7 to 10 day long free concerts every night. And it was like a huge thing. It was super cool.
Good time.
Yeah, had a great time.
Anything is better to me than New York City. Obviously, you're closer to Philly, and Philly is, we won't have to have that argument, but like you said, cleaner. I'm
Philly's
like, yeah,
a great place.
Philly is. I mean, I'm not supposed to like Philly because I'm a New York fan of all these sports. I do like Philly, the city, better than New York. But anyway, let's talk some football here. So what we're going to start with today is an episode. We'll probably have 4 or 5 episodes in this series. We're going to go position by position, breaking down players, of course, what we do, coming off injuries. And we're going to talk, this is why Zach is here and myself is here, talk about their fantasy outlook for the year. So today we're going to talk about quarterbacks. We're going to go in order of current ADP. As of right now, it's still early. It's July 12th. Things can change. Things will change, but we'll talk about some of these players. We've got Lamar Jackson, Tua, Stafford, a bunch of others. And Tom will talk to us. He'll give us a little breakdown of their injuries. We'll tell you if we like them or if we don't. Then we got a fun little segment for the end. And you know, usually what we do talk about for everybody out there is generally redraft. And if you guys ever have any questions about dynasty, about 2 quarterback leagues, I don't know if you guys play in all those. There's so many ridiculous formats these days. It's so hard to like keep track and make everything uniform, I guess, so to say. But anybody out there with questions, let us know. But that's going to be it for today. You guys ready to dive in?
Let's get it.
Yeah.
All right. And as we talk about these quarterbacks, right, I think it's also super valuable to note that this doesn't just relate to the quarterbacks. Sure, we're going to talk about, again, Lamar Jackson and Tua and the 49ers quarterbacks, but this also is going to help you in predicting how the other weapons, how the wide receivers, how their overall offense, their tight end, their running back is going to perform. We know in all of sports, right, guys, quarterback is the most important position, right? So if a quarterback, for some reason, Tom will get into, is not fully healthy, something's wrong, that's going to hurt the other players as well. So there's a lot of things that we could dive into here and discuss, but we will start with the first quarterback on our list here, Lamar Jackson. So as of right now, again, still early, he's going off at quarterback 5. ADP right now, average draft position, is around 38. That's around the start of the 4th round. Coming off a knee PCL strain that was in December. Tom, what do you think his outlook is here, coming into the 2023 season?
Lamar's one that we talked a lot about at the end of last season because his injury was kind of downplayed, I think, by people in the Ravens media and just people covering them and trying to predict how Lamar was going to perform after. But we talked the whole time about how concerning that was for his return last season because the PCL It can be slow to heal. It doesn't truly heal. You have to kind of train your muscles to compensate for it. But also it's very easy for it to get re-aggravated in the same season. We've seen that with Ezekiel Elliott, with Julio Jones, with Dalton Schultz. So last season we were very concerned for the rest of his season outlook, but this year is totally different. I mean, he's had a whole entire offseason to rehab. So swelling should be fine by now. Strength should be normal. We talked a lot about proprioception last year, which is the body's ability to know where its limbs are in space without looking, which is absolutely crucial for someone like Lamar Jackson, who's so agile and constantly cutting on a dime. All of that should be fine by now, and I don't expect any lingering issue from this. And if we think about his injury history in general, so last week's show, which if you haven't listened to, go back and listen to it, we talk all about what the medical research says about attempting to, I don't like to use the word predict, but understand if a player is at a higher risk for injury. The number one thing is prior injury. That and age are the two biggest things that can influence future injury. And Lamar's injury history, while the last 2 seasons have ended early because of an ankle sprain in 21 and this PCL injury in 22, that's really it from a major injury standpoint, which any player entering it's either his 5th or 6th season, if that's all that's on your injury list, that's not terrible. So I'm not overly concerned about Lamar Jackson's situation going into this upcoming season.
I like him. You know, I'm going to provide some info here because this is what I do. And Tom, of course, you provide a great, and it's your guy. This is just my blanket statement. It's your guys' job at home to do a little work. You guys listen, you kind of make your own decisions. But yeah, Tom, I'm not worried either, but you know, just his last couple seasons, let's take a look from a fantasy perspective, right? Can't forget a couple years back, 2019, boys, he was the MVP. That was a special, awesome season. Now back to 2020. So right now he's going quarterback 5, right? Last 3 years has not returned value on that at all. 2020 finished as quarterback 10, missed a game. 2021 missed 5.5 games, finished as the quarterback 15. 2022 last year finished as the quarterback 14, missed 5 games. I mean, if you guys remember too, remember weeks 2 and 3 last year for Lamar, 42 points and 40 points. Guy went off. He's great, but I mean, aside from that one MVP season, of course he's good, but he hasn't returned value. But listen, for this year, I do like him, at least at his ADP. I'm not going to reach for him. New offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, comes in. I think he's going to provide a boost. I think the older offensive coordinator was Greg Roman with the run-first approach. Monken coached at Georgia. He loves the vertical attack. We would love to see Lamar throw a little bit more. Probably going to modernize that passing attack, I would think. And listen, he's still got good weapons, right? I mean, Bateman, we're kind of waiting. What is it, his 3rd season? We're kind of waiting on that breakout year, but he's still there, right? Mark Andrews, a consistent weapon. They have Odell. I don't know if he's dust or not, but he's there. Nelson Aguilar, Tom, your old boy from the Eagles. They got J.K. Dobbins. They drafted Zay Flowers out of Boston College. Like, the weapons are there, but then there are some concerns. So I think it's fair where he's going, right? He's got the injuries. Since 2019, there's been a big decline in his passing attempts. They always talk about cutting back on the rushing attempts, right? Like, we want to keep him around, keep him safe. I don't know what to make of it because there's all these positives, but then there's also those red flags. You know, Zach, what do you think about Lamar for this year, man? Do you feel it's a fair ADP for him, QB5?
Yeah, I mean, obviously QB5 is a pretty significant investment, but anybody who talks to me too long will find out that I'm a Lamar truther of sorts. I don't really know how or why I'm a Patriots fan, but have somewhat grabbed onto Lamar as, like, I don't know, my ideal quarterback or something like that. But I'm really excited about him this year. I think it's fair, you know, at 5, he's just behind Joe Burrow, above Justin Fields. I think he's a better passer than Fields and just as good of a runner. So to me, that makes sense. The interesting thing with Lamar is that even just from a rushing standpoint, you could worry that perhaps he would drop in rushing yardage and everything overall now with the new system going in and then passing more. But he's actually more productive on scrambles than he is on designed runs, which is really interesting. Now, I don't remember the numbers But that's a significant thing. Obviously, scrambles happening on pass plays. When Lamar doesn't see anything, it's either going to be open because of the new receivers that he has, or it's not going to be there and he's going to run and he's going to get you some yardage that way. So I don't really see too much of a hit to his rushing coming down, but I see his passing volume going up significantly. So I think it's pretty fair personally, but again, I'm biased for whatever reason. So
I do remember last year whenever we had you on the show, you mentioning Lamar as like your favorite something. I totally now it's all coming back to me right now. I mean, again, I truthfully do think it's fair. I'm not taking him over, of course, Hurts or Mahomes or Allen, Justin Fields right in that mix right there. Again, I think it's fair. He's going to give you that floor every single week. Tom seems to not be overly concerned about the injury. Again, talked a little bit about it. Should be okay. So I think it's fair. I'm not going out of my way to get Lamar, but I'm happy if he falls to me 5th round, late 4th round, whatever it might be. Okay. Next guy has been confusing. There's talk of him maybe retiring, not actually now, but at the time during his injuries, during all the concussions. Tua Tagovailoa. My goodness gracious.
I have never
Tua.
been able to pronounce it.
Tagovailoa.
I just stick with Tua and I don't worry about the rest.
A unique first name because I have never been able to get his last name down.
I got risky here on a Wednesday evening. I could have easily just said Tua and got bailed out, but we're going for it. Tua T. So he's going off a little bit later. He's QB 11 right now. ADP's around 90, so that's going to be around the 8th round there. Multiple pretty severe concussions. I mean, we talked a lot last year about how scary it was and so many different aspects to these concussions. Tom, what do you think his outlook is, at least from an injury perspective, for this coming year?
There's definitely cause for concern. So I talked to our good friend Andrew Tierketter, who is a concussion and neuro specialist, and he has some concerns. And basically what we were talking about is within the nervous system, so the brain and the nerves, we'll talk about some more of that with another player coming up. When there's a prior injury, it takes less of a threshold, so less of a forceful hit for a subsequent injury to occur. And oftentimes that subsequent injury is more symptomatic than the prior one. So that's why we see when players have multiple concussions, they end up typically missing more and more time. It takes longer for them to progress through the concussion protocol on the subsequent concussions because the brain is more sensitive at that point. It takes less of a hit for concussion symptoms to come on, and they are typically more pronounced. Now, that's not every time. There's no way to perfectly predict that, but that's one of the unique things about the brain and the nervous system in general, where which can be a little bit different than soft tissue injuries, more severe, obviously, with it being the brain or the nerves, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But again, impossible to predict if he's going to have a concussion, if his line can protect him well, if he can protect himself well, if they can scheme properly for him to not take any big hits. He could play the whole season, and he could play very well. I don't expect any drop in production because of his concussion history. The concern is it's more likely that he's going to have another concussion than if he didn't have this history.
And I remember last year we kind of made the comparison that literally his brain and head almost is injury prone now, just to simplify kind of what that's kind of what you were saying. And
yeah, that's a very layman's term way to put it.
That's what I do out here. Can't pronounce Tua's last name, but I'll tell you the easiest way to understand his injury history. It's a matter of if he's going to play the whole season, right? I mean, that's what worries me. Zach, what do you think his outlook is? Do you like Tua? I know you're not going to like him as much as Lamar, but what are your thoughts on Tua for this year?
Yeah, I mean, it all definitely hinges on that injury risk. And I don't know, Tom, if you are able to expound any more on, as he gets farther away from his previous concussions, is there less of a risk or less of an impact? Obviously within the immediate couple days. But so that's what I don't know and I'm ignorant on. But insofar as how he's going to play, if he's healthy, I think he's an easy top 10. I don't, just having Waddle and Hill and that offense there, he's obviously going to put up numbers. Now, we did see a decline a bit, But a lot of that was after one of the concussions that he had. And I mean, in that one game, he had like 3 picks after having that weird hit that we saw. I do know that he's gained a little bit of weight. I don't know if that has any relevance to whether or not he will sustain another concussion or not, but I know that they're at least thinking about it. And as far as I know, they don't have anybody behind him. So the Dolphins, whether they're crazy or not, are relying on him.
Yeah,
That's
just to
Go ahead,
kind of to speak on that, the sooner from the concussion, of course, they're going to be at more risk for a subsequent one. As you get further out, I would think that would be less, the brain would be less sensitive, but it's still more sensitive than prior to any concussions.
Makes
So
sense.
is it less of a risk now than it was during the season? Probably, but still more of a risk than if he had no concussion history.
Zach, with the interesting fact about him gaining weight, that, I mean, it could be intentional, maybe just to bulk up a little bit. I mean, his rushing ability is not really there anyway, so that's not a concern. So maybe he's just trying to be a little bit more durable. But it's like you guys said, it's a huge if. You know, I think there's a lot of positives here. I mean, really, you take a look, Miami's offense, guys, it could be one of the best in football. That is an electric. We could debate all day about who's got the best top 2 receivers. You can bring in Chase and Higgins, and you could bring in all these other guys, but Waddle and Hill is disgusting. It's you just got to get them
It
the
really
football,
is.
right? I mean,
And it doesn't.
crazy.
You could be on your own 10-yard line and they could score a touchdown. Like they're both
you just give them a
still
slant,
elite
right?
Speed.
Exactly. I mean, Tua himself, right? I mean, he saw some really big games last year, was kind of in stretches. So I'm a little bit worried about like his consistency. He did have that huge 6 touchdown game, but a couple just stats for you guys to think about. Led the league in passing yards per attempt. He had 4 games last year as a top 4 quarterback. I think there was only 7 or so guys to actually do that. So 4 weeks, he really, really, really cashed in. Had the highest touchdown rate in the NFL. He led the league. This is interesting. He led the league in passing yards on play action. And last year is ADOT. Those of you guys that don't know, that's average depth of target, how far he's throwing the ball down the field. It spiked like crazy last year. So that's where I'm actually kind of hitting the brakes now, because I'm actually a little bit worried. The big plays happen. Can't take them away. But I'm worried that him and that offense last year relied a lot on those big plays. And that's where a lot of Tua's success did come from. Granted, you have Tyreek Hill and Waddle who could take a slant like we just said to the house. But I'm worried about that. I think we could see a little bit regression there. And again, last year with the injuries, missed 4 games, finished as QB 15, a little bit inconsistent. I think it's a fair ADP, guys. I don't know. The cost is, you know, the injury is baked into his cost, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, a little preview for later. I don't know if I love him this year, but I'm just worried. I just see the picture of him going down, and I'm just, it's like one hit. Every Dolphins game I watch, if I pick him, I'm just going to be like, oh, bad hit. I'm going to be concerned. I'm going to text Tom, and he's going to tell me it's going to be okay, and it'll be all right. But I don't know. I got a bad taste in my mouth about him. We'll see how things go throughout the year. Okay. So we have, let's see, we have 5 players left, a little bit deeper dive into ADP here. Still a fantasy relevant player, Matthew Stafford, right now going at QB 20. His ADP a little bit later, 126. It's around the 11th round. So if you miss a lot of these big guys, Stafford could be a second quarterback on your team. Coming off an interesting one, and he's got a rich injury history. We use, what's that site, Tom, that we use? There's like 15 or 20 of them, maybe even more injuries. But last year, the latest one, concussion, but correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, a spinal cord injury, right?
A spinal cord contusion. And by the way, for everyone listening, I'm reading Joe's show notes right now, and he spelled cord CHORD, which I just love.
Spinal. Sorry.
There's no
spinal
H in it.
piano. That makes. Hey, I mean.
Wait. Is chord is like when you play an instrument?
I think that's how you spelled it.
Well, he teaches math, right? Not English. Something
No,
like
I teach history.
Oh, history. Okay. Well, you're good.
Yeah.
Fine. It's all right.
Spinal chord. All right, Tom, tell us about his spinal cord injury already. Stop making fun of me.
Oh my goodness, that's good. So this is another one that I consulted our buddy Andrew Tierketter, the neuro specialist, on, and again, he's a little bit concerned for the exact same reason as Tua. Remember, this is a nervous system injury. It's different than soft tissue injuries, and TK was kind of explaining to me that the nervous system almost has like a memory of prior injuries, to where when it gets injured again, it's going to like signal the brain like, yo, what is happening? this is, and it kind of amplifies the second injury in a way that's supposed to be protective, and it is protective, but sometimes it can be a little bit too amplified. But anyway, the point is, the idea here is similar to Tua's concussion situation, where it's going to take less of a threshold to like less of an impact to potentially create a similar or more significant injury. And TK was quite concerned about this, with it being a spinal cord contusion. You know, that's the nerves that go to your arms, your legs, etc. So he was not super thrilled about Stafford playing this year. But again, it's still gonna take the right hit to do that. It's not like he's guaranteed to have another injury by any means. It's a pretty rare injury, a spinal cord contusion. It's pretty rare for football players. I haven't heard of a whole lot, other than I mean, the linebacker for the Steelers, Shazier, had a true spinal cord injury. There's been some more of those in history, but definitely some increased injury risk here for Stafford. And I mean, he's also old. He's 35, so right there, that increases your risk for injury. And he has a laundry list of prior injuries. So again, those are the two biggest factors that can influence future injuries: is age and prior injury. All that said, like, none of this is going to impact his ability to throw the ball unless he gets injured. So if you're drafting Stafford, you can do so expecting whatever production you're expecting from him, but just understand there's a little bit more of a risk for injury. Now, with all his injuries, he still managed to be on the field for the most part, other than this past year. But so you really just kind of have to weigh the risk versus benefit. Like, I don't know that Stafford is startable anyway. Maybe in two QB leagues, of course, he probably is. But that's really the only place I would consider drafting him.
I'm not drafting him. I'm out on him, and I have 6th pick in my league, and this is why I'm actually seriously really hesitant to even look at Kupp, because I've dealt with Kupp the last 2 years. Tremendous, unbelievable. But the second Stafford's done, Kupp's average points are going to come down 7, 8 points. So that's why I'm a little bit skeptical, not just about Stafford. I'm pretty much out on him, but on Kupp as well. I mean, there's a lot of red flags. Lately, last couple seasons, Stafford's interceptions have been up. Again, there's a lot of red flags there. 2021, he was QB5, but it just doesn't seem worth it to me. And beyond Kupp, to tell you the truth, I don't even know who else is on that team. Ben Skoranek, Higbee. Is Higbee still there? Is Higbee gone?
Van Jefferson.
Jeff Van Jeff. It doesn't impress me much.
Puka?
So I don't.
You don't like Puka?
Who?
Yeah.
Is that a rookie?
Yeah. It's the rookie.
Puka Nacua. Yeah, I mean, and
how do you say it now, guys? Say Puka who? Puka Nacua?
Puka Nacua. That's what I've heard. I mean,
Okay.
I'm not a name expert, but I mean, if I can jump in, I guess, on this. Yeah, there's just not anybody. I think the highest yards total from receivers who are still on the team from last year outside of Cooper Kupp was Van Jefferson. He had like 376. So unless all of these guys contribute, a very significant amount more, I just am not excited about Stafford at all. And I think somebody was telling me, or I was counting, if you just look them up on Our Lads, their whole roster is green, which is for rookie. And they brought in, it could have been somewhere like 25 undrafted rookie free agents. They have 40 or so rookies currently on the roster. Obviously, by the time they get to the season, that's going to be less. This team went 5-12 last year. I'm not super excited. And the Kupp thing, I don't have a hot take on. But I'm not excited about Stafford. And honestly, if he gets beat up at all this year, I don't see why they're going to have a ton of optimism when there was a bunch of retirement talk last year. So,
and I just read a report that they actually tried to trade Stafford this offseason.
You're right. I saw that as well, and I don't know how legit it is or isn't, but it doesn't shock me that they tried to trade him, and it also doesn't shock me that they couldn't. So
right.
Who's the backup? Brett Rippin or Ripon? Tough show for names. We're gonna have to title this episode "Can't Pronounce Names," but I think that's I don't know. They have a rookie. Did they draft anybody?
Stetson Bennett.
Stetson Bennett.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you believe in Stetson.
Believe in the rebuild year for the Rams. I mean, again, I'm super skeptical, and this is what this could be the last year we're even talking about Stafford in a fantasy relevance realm, I guess, so to say. So,
and possibly Sean McVay.
Could be. Dude, guy was you kind of look like Sean McVay. No, never mind. A little bit.
Hey, I would take that. I would take that very
He's a
happily.
good-looking young guy.
You
Yeah,
started to
I'm looking at
mention
the
it,
hair.
I'm gonna seize onto that now.
And those of you guys listening in the car, this is live, not live, but it's up on YouTube. So go check us out at any point. This was a perfect unplanned transition. But watch us on YouTube. You can see Zach's beautiful face and Tom's tan he got in Canada.
Is that amazing? I did get tan in Canada. Who
I
would
just
have
made
thought?
that up. I don't think you look tan, but
Well, I did get tan.
all right,
So
fine.
thank you. I'll take that compliment as well.
Anytime. Speaking of compliments, don't really have many about Kyler Murray just because of the late injury. We're looking at a week
That was
14.
mean.
14 last year, torn ACL, going late. And again, this is something that's baked right in there. QB 23, probably undrafted in a lot of leagues. You're looking at ADP around 144. That's the 12th round. We're talking 12-team leagues. And just to run some stuff quickly here, 2020, QB5, 2021, QB4. And by the way, these stats, I'm sorry, these are points per game. So points per game when he's on the field. QB5, QB4, last year was QB7. Cardinals are terrible, though. So just before you dive in, Tom, and talk injury here, I'm worried that if he doesn't come back till week 6, 7, I don't really know. You could talk about that. And they're 2-5, 2-4, that they don't rush him back. I don't know, Tom. Tell me what to think about Kyler and the Cardinals.
I think 2-4 is pretty favorable there. I think they're going to be awful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he had surgery January 3rd. That's 8 months and 7 days to week 1, which is far earlier than we like to see coming off an ACL. 9 months is what the research identifies as a cutoff for a major risk for a re-tear, but we want as far out from injury as possible, pushing as close to a year as possible. We talked several episodes ago, and I wrote in an article a few months ago about some of the factors that we look for a favorable or non-favorable return from an ACL tear. And Kyler's actually got a few in his favor. One being it was an isolated ACL tear. By all reports, there's no other tissues that were repaired. That's favorable for recovery. And this guy's, say what you want about him as an actual quarterback, but he's a really, really, really good athlete. So that goes in their favor as well. However, the major negative factor is the time frame that we just talked about. Like, time is not in his favor by any means. And like you said, if he doesn't return till week 5, week 6, which they're already talking about him starting starting camp on the PUP, if they're 0-6, 1-5, they may say, okay, dude, take as much time as you need. We're not doing anything this season. And then he may not come back till like week 8, week 9.
And he still is the future. I mean, he's only 25 years old, so it's not like it's do or die for him this year, right? I mean, he's got plenty of years left in the NFL.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I really
we got a hot take coming in. Hold on.
All right.
Oh, sorry. I mean, I don't know that he's going to be on the Cardinals. I think there's at least a chance that he's not on the Cardinals next year. So
but still in the league.
In the league,
okay,
yes. In the
fair.
league, yes. That's fair. You're right. Yeah, I don't see a reason why somebody wouldn't play him. So you're right. I should have.
No, that's fair. You just don't see him being on the Cardinals. Okay.
Maybe.
So what do you think about him for this year then? I mean, is it even worth draft? Is this a guy you like, 14th round? Do you take him, or do you take a rookie wide receiver with upside, or a rookie running back, or a handcuff?
Right.
Or do you just take a stab and say, all right, let me get Kyler, and maybe he's back week 8 and wins me a championship? I don't know.
Here's the way I'm approaching it. Quarterbacks traditionally are not that impacted in their first season after an ACL tear, like Joe Burrow. When Brady had his, there's a number of others. But Kyler's a running quarterback. That's the big difference here. So much of his fantasy value comes on the ground, which will very likely be not at his prior level in this season. Plus, he doesn't really have the greatest supporting cast around him. I mean, you got Hollywood Brown. You've got Zach Ertz, who's coming back from his own injury and is, Joe, we've talked about before, we're hoping that he just kind of follows like a Jason Witten end of career type path. So not exactly a huge weapon anymore.
Rondell Moore,
who still
catches
there,
the ball 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage. He's good for 7 catches and 31 yards.
Yeah. But I mean, let's say that you take the approach of not drafting a quarterback till very late, and that your league has 1 or 2 IR slots.
Yeah.
That's the only situation I'm drafting Murray. Is let's say your starting quarterback is Tua or Kirk Cousins or someone like that, and with your second to last pick, you stash Murray, keep him on the IR for however long, and that's only if he is not playing that you can keep him there, by the way.
Right.
So that's the only situation I'm drafting him. Outside of that, I'm not drafting him, but I'm going to keep my eye on him because, every now and then we do have a player who just kind of defies the odds and performs really, really well in that first season after an ACL tear. And it's not out of the question for that to be Murray. I just don't think it's in the first half of the season.
Fair enough. Zach, in, out, neither. What do you think?
I'd be out. Yeah, I don't even know if I'd bother stashing him on the IR, but if you did, that would make sense. But otherwise, I'd probably prefer to just keep somebody on the roster who I can drop within the first couple of weeks if I don't see anything from, or maybe try to grab a rookie like Marvin Mims or somebody like that maybe after the first 5 or 6 weeks, you'll get something from. Because it sounds like you'll get something from them before you'll get something from Kyler, according to Tom. So
fair enough. I mean, the only way is if I just miss out on like the top 14 quarterbacks and then
yeah.
I just look at someone who has an easy beginning of year schedule and then play them and then hope that Kyler comes back. But that would be, I think if I have Kyler on any of my teams, I probably failed the draft. That's what I'm going to say. Okay.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
All right, we got 3 left. Now we're getting slightly out of fantasy relevance, but I know according to Zach, he's got some takes on this. Maybe not. We'll see. We got Jimmy G, and then we'll talk about the 49ers. But Jimmy G first, quarterback 29, ADP 184, really late 16th round. On the Raiders, by the way, everybody. He's got some good weapons, probably the best weapons he's had. I mean, he's had, actually, maybe not. He's had, those other weapons on the Niners as well, but he's got Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Josh Jacobs. What's up with Jimmy G? What was even his injury, Tom? I actually didn't even take note of it.
Oh, wow. Well done.
Was it spinal cord?
No. He had a foot fracture.
I don't wish that upon anybody, by the way. Knock on wood for him. Much better. Okay.
He had the foot fracture that then needed another procedure for. So he has not participated in mini camps or OTAs, but all signs are pointing to him being ready for camp. Really no major concern. There was a lot of drama a month or so ago because in his contract, the Raiders can cut him free of all his guaranteed money if he doesn't pass the physical. But all reports are pretty confident that he's going to pass the physical and be good to go. Now, going back to our last show where we talked about risk factors for injury, age and prior injury being the 2 biggest one, Jimmy's 31, so age is not exactly in his favor. Here's his injury history. AC joint sprain, ACL tear, 2 high ankle sprains, grade 3, I believe, both of them, calf strain, thumb fracture and ligament tear of his throwing thumb, rotator cuff repair of his throwing shoulder, and this broken foot situation. So, not exactly
catching up to Stafford.
not exactly a favorable injury history, but again, a difference here with a running back, receiver, or tight end is a quarterback's probably not going to get hurt from a non-contact injury unless it's like a scrambling quarterback, like we saw with Kyler last year. For Garoppolo to get hurt, he's going to get hit in order for him to get hurt, which, again, this injury history, he's still more likely to get injured than if he didn't have that history, but it's still going to take the right hit for him to get injured. So it's kind of hard to gauge like how much stock we're putting into this injury history, being that they pretty much were all contact injuries. But it's still a pretty concerning history, and I don't think he's good enough to outweigh that injury risk for him to be on my team, again, unless it's a 2 QB league.
And then, great points. And then that stems off to Devontae Adams, because if Jimmy G is down, I trust Jimmy G, but I'm looking at their depth chart. Brian Hoyer, okay. Aiden O'Connell, that's going to be a huge hit. If you are worried after listening, if you are worried about Jimmy G at all, could be reason for concern for Devontae Adams. Probably one of the best wide receivers ever, but Just saying, something to think about. Zach, what are your thoughts on Jimmy G?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have too many hot takes, but I will say, well, maybe this is. Do we know that Jimmy Garoppolo is good? We saw that he was fine in San Francisco. He played a couple games for the Patriots, but other than that, he's played for Kyle Shanahan the whole time, right? And
He's
now,
a
of
game
course,
manager, right? Like,
yeah,
He's a very good game manager.
yeah, and he's back with Josh McDaniels. So if he was going to go, I would feel better about him where he's at than if he went to some random place that had a first-year play caller or something like that. But I don't trust the Raiders. I don't know that you've ever trusted Jimmy G. I wouldn't trust him to be on my team.
Seems like a
That's
nice
kinda where
guy, grab a cup of coffee with him, we're the same age, good looking guy, a lot of good looking young football players out here, Mike, and coaches, but I'm with you, man. I don't think I could trust him either. I think he's best probably left on waivers for the 2023 season. Down to our last two. We are going to talk about, and I need a lot of clarifying here. Tom, Zach, 49ers quarterback situation. Tom, I guess we'll go one at a time, and then Zach, I'm going to turn it over to you, man, because you could talk about the podcast that you were just on or that you just hosted. Or, I think you had somebody on with you from the 49ers, one of the beat writers, right, from the 49ers. Is that what it was?
Yep. Jack Hammer. Yeah. Santa Rosa Press Democrat.
What a name.
That's actually the best name. Historic Jack Hammer. Okay. I'll let you get to that. I'll introduce the injuries, and then Tom, you can take it away, and then Zach on to you. So Brock Purdy going real late, guys. QB 25, ADP 182, the 16th round. He's got an elbow tear or coming off an elbow tear. And then Trey Lance, QB 31, also ADP right around 180, 185, 16th round. He's coming off a fractured ankle. Tom, what do you see it? I don't even know who's going to be their starter. I think it's going to be Lance. I'm hearing Purdy. I know Zach probably likes Purdy. Tom, why don't we talk injuries first with these guys?
Let's talk injuries. Let's start with Purdy, who had the UCL tear that was repaired with an internal brace. The average timeline on that is 5 months. His surgery was March 10th, so 5 months would be August 10th. The start of the season is September 10th. A lot of 10s there. Purdy, when recovering from this injury, the throwing program starts typically week 12 post-op. Zach, I believe Jack Hammer was saying that he actually started a little bit before that, which is great. That's great to hear. Obviously, that meant his surgeon was comfortable with what he saw from his healing, that he allowed him to start a little bit early. We're looking at that throwing program advances over the next 8 weeks to 20 weeks post-op, gradually increasing distance, increasing number of throws, increasing velocity. So it's not like you go from nothing to full at that 12 weeks post-op mark. So 20 weeks post-op will be July 28th, I believe, and the Niners start camp only in a couple days before that. So Purdy should be full go by the second week of camp at worst, which should give him vital opportunity to fend off Trey Lance for the starting job. So now let's go into Trey Lance, who had that right, and it's critical that it's his right ankle, fibula fracture with ligament damage that required surgery for both. Now, his surgery was back in either September or October. He's had plenty of time to heal and rehab, and he's full go by now, no doubt, running, cutting, throwing, etc. However, this type of injury with a pretty significant surgery like he had, there's always that risk for lingering stiffness in the foot and the ankle from it being immobilized for a while in either a cast or a boot after the surgery. Sometimes people don't always regain the motion. Now, he's very young, so his likelihood of regaining full range of motion is much better than if, say, Jimmy Garoppolo, who had his own surgeries on his foot and is several years older. Now, even if Lance doesn't fully regain the range of motion, I wouldn't expect that to dramatically impact his athleticism, his throw power, maybe a little bit his accuracy, but probably not dramatically. And I wouldn't really expect it to impact his running speed or agility, but just potentially influencing mechanical things in the knee and the hip and the back that could influence future injury. So again, prior injury, biggest predictor of future injury. However, age in Lance's favor. So I'm not super concerned with either of these guys from an injury standpoint. And now, Zach, I'll turn over to you to talk about what you think about them.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't want to ruin like the in-out segment of anything, but
Go
after
ahead, shoot your
talking,
shot, man. Go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, after talking with Jack from, like I said, the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, he covers the 49ers. You should definitely check him out. He's got a lot of really good tweets and data on his Twitter about like that whole situation. After talking with him, now I admittedly am a Trey Lance truther, or I was, anyways. I was very excited about him, drafted him in Dynasty. So, but I've traded him away, and I've given up my hopes on that. I am on the Brock Purdy train, as it were. And if you want to hear more about that from Jack and some of the breakdown I did on our show, you can find that at 32 Beat Beyond the Tweets, and you can search that just wherever you get your podcasts. But yeah, I actually think that Purdy is a pretty good value where he's going at right now. You have him at ADP 182. I don't know exactly where I had him at, but he's going around people like, well, let me grab it here. I lost it. There we go. Yeah, like Derek Carr. Yep. Jordan Love, Kenny Pickett, who had like a historically bad first round rookie season. So I don't understand that at all. And frankly, just if we're listening to the 49ers and if we're watching what they've done, they brought in a guy to compete as a backup. And Purdy, they've said that Purdy's the starter. He's ahead of schedule. And just after talking to Jack, it really made me feel very confident that Purdy was going to be the guy. Now, anything can change, injuries and all of that. But he did seem to make it pretty clear that once Purdy is over that injury, it'll be very clear that he is and that he's an immediate full go. It's not something that they'll ease him into too much. And they, like Tom said, he's kind of ahead of schedule here. So I'm very in on Purdy. I can give you some more details about that if you want right now. But I would definitely anticipate seeing Purdy instead of Lance this year if you're taking my opinion.
Now, do you think they would trade Lance? Is that something that is on the table for them, do you think? I mean, the guy was what? He was a third. What was he picked? Third overall?
Third overall.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you do the math on it, they gave up.
Right? Like,
oh, sorry, I interrupted you there.
Yeah, he was the third overall pick. They traded a haul to get him too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my internet was weird there for a second, so I apologize. But yeah, I think that's the only way that he's not on the roster. He has too much of a dead cap to just simply cut, and that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Purdy's cheap enough that this whole situation isn't really costing them anything from that standpoint. You know, maybe by week 8, if there's an injury or something like that to either somebody on the roster, you know, the 49ers are not good with injury history. So maybe he gets a start just by chance. But if there's another quarterback somewhere else in the league or something like that who goes down, you could see that. They did try to trade him in the offseason. So that's the only thing that I would see happening. And I think it's a possibility, but I don't know how likely it is until the offseason.
All right. We shall see. So that wraps up our first and longest segment, but some really good information there. Just to recap the players we discussed: Lamar Jackson, Tua, Matthew Stafford, Kyler, Jimmy Garoppolo, and then Brock Purdy and Trey Lance. So some really good information there, Tom. Thank you. Now let's transition over to our final short little segment here. In or out? Tom, we got to get some theme music for this going forward. It's going to be great. In, I don't know. It's going to be awesome.
We're gonna have to figure out the technology on that.
We're working on it, guys. We are getting better every damn day. We're working our butts off out here to make a better show for you guys out there. Okay, so Zach will go first, then Tom, and then myself. So we're just going to talk one player each, one quarterback, since that's what our show's about. One player that we're real in on for this year at their ADP at least, and one player that we're fading. And again, at least for me, these are at ADP. We're not talking that we don't like these players as people or even as football players. It's more for fantasy draft relevance. So we'll let the guests go first. Zach, who are you in and who are you out on for this year?
Sounds good. Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to go out and then in because it's just an
Ooh.
easier transition there for me, anyways, with the guys I have. So if I'm looking at who I'm out on, it's going to be Kirk Cousins. Now, he's not being drafted incredibly high, but he's at QB 13 right now. And it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because he's being drafted in front of rushers like Daniel Jones. But he also has ADP in front of Aaron Rodgers and Jared Goff, at least in best ball formats. So he, of course, has Justin Jefferson, which is probably the only thing propping him up. And they added Jordan Addison this year. But last year, he was currently he's being, if you look at certain sites, he's being projected at like QB9. And I just don't understand. I don't want to buy that. He played 17 games and was a top 10 QB in only 7 of them. 2 of those were against Detroit. And I think they're going to be a little bit better this year. They're still not going to have a great defense, but they should be better. And then one of them took the greatest comeback in NFL history to make happen. So I just don't know that it might be repeatable, but I don't know that he's going to improve on anything. And he was quarterback 6 last year, but that was in a year where scoring was just super down across the league, and he was actually lower than his previous couple of years where he placed significantly lower in the quarterback ranking. So I'm just not super excited about him as an upside player where you're getting him. I'd rather just draft the guy who will probably do the same, if not better, we've already talked about him, Brock Purdy. So this is who I'm in on, barring
That's
any
a killer transition right there. Nicely
thank
done.
you. Yeah, I had it written out and everything. I'm like, oh, this is how I'm going to do this. So,
That's beautiful.
I think barring a catastrophic implosion, Brock's going to be the guy. Again, some people, you can disagree with that, but that's just what I'm hearing. So that's what I'm going to go with. I think you get a great floor from him. You're not going to get a ton of rushing. But you are probably getting, in my opinion, a top 10 QB. I don't think that's unreasonable. Last year, while he started in week 13 as a 6th round pick, the last guy in the draft, right? He was a QB1 in 3 of those 6 regular season games that he started. One of them was QB5, right? And he has Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey started for them right at the trade deadline, I think it was. But if you look at Christian McCaffrey, he had 5 receiving touchdowns on the season. 3 of them came after week 13 or in week 13 while Purdy was starting. So I just think they have a lot of ways to throw the ball into the end zone. And I think that that's going to make Purdy's job really easy. So yeah, you're not getting a ton of rushing upside, but he's going around people like I mentioned, Derek Carr, Jordan Love, who knows? Kenny Pickett, possibly terrible, and has Matt Canada as an OC, right? So I'm just not in on any of those guys, and I think you got at a great value, somebody like Brock Purdy. So I'd rather have him, like I mentioned, than Kirk Cousins, who you could grab like Damian Harris or Rashad Penny instead of and grab Purdy late. So that would be what I would do.
I was really surprised with some of the stats that Jack Hammer put out on the 32 Beat Writers show. That, what was he saying, that it was Purdy had like the exact same completion percentage as Mahomes on deep balls?
Yeah, he was very good on deep balls, and he was really good over the middle of the field, which is good for a Kyle Shanahan offense.
Absolutely.
Again, he's just got guys that you put the ball in their hands, they're going to make plays for you. All right.
Yep.
Beat that, Tom. What do you got? Beat our guest. What do you got? Who you in? Who you out on?
Well, that's going to be hard to beat because Purdy's starting to sound really, really nice.
It really is.
How's this one? I'm in on Aaron Rodgers, Mr. Spite himself. He's once again has elite talent around him. I mean, Garrett Wilson is an emerging superstar. They've got a nice backfield. I think this is a nice offense that he's got around him. And he is the most spiteful human being in the world. Anytime someone doubts him, he's going to prove them wrong. So I think he was not pleased with how things went last season for him and his team. And I think he's still got at least a year or two to prove himself. And he's currently, according to Fantasy Pros, quarterback 17. That's free. If you want to punt the quarterback position, you can take Rodgers late, and you can be, I think, fairly confident that you're getting a nice piece to your team. Now,
I'm going to play devil's advocate here, Tom. I'm going to be difficult today.
Please do.
Rodgers last year,
When are you not difficult?
always, finished as a top 12 quarterback twice.
Who was he
Hasn't
throwing to?
thrown. Hold on. Yeah, you're okay. Hasn't thrown for 300 yards since week 14 of 2021. Just some
So
stats
again,
for you, Tom.
just a bad last season when he had no throw to.
Christian Watson was
He didn't
good.
emerge halfway through the season. And he
Romeo
was very
Dobbs
good.
was a warm body.
What
You
a
know.
joke.
All right.
You
fair
are
enough.
just bored on summer break and looking for stuff to do.
I'm so bored, and I have so many statistics here. So whatever you say, I'm going to have something for or against. But okay, you convinced
right.
me a little bit, though. All right.
Anyway, I'm out on Anthony Richardson, who's currently, according to Fantasy Pros,
Ooh.
quarterback 14. There's no question this guy has all the upside, all of the upside, but he's raw. So here's my question for you guys. Was Josh Allen good in his rookie season?
No, not really. No,
How about Jalen Hurts?
Well,
he ran a decent amount.
yeah.
Okay. How about Justin Fields? Was he a great fantasy option in his rookie season? He had games.
Not
but
his
overall-
rookie season. No, I hear you.
Okay.
I'm so in on Anthony Richardson in Dynasty. I'm so out on him in redraft. I am totally okay with missing the boat if he proves me wrong, but I don't think that he's on a great team that has great weapons. I think, first off, we don't even know if he's starting. I mean, he will at some point for sure. But Gardner Minshew's there, who everybody loves. He's the freaking man. I think Minshew will have at least potentially start a few weeks before Richardson takes over. And then there's just too many question marks here for me, and I'm willing to be wrong about him for this season.
But you're predicting that next year you'll probably be like, all right, like I'm ready for him, but he's too raw for you. All right.
Absolutely.
Speaking of Gardner Minshew, Tom, as we almost wrap up our show here, you kind of actually give off Gardner Minshew vibes. I'm not just throwing that out there.
Best compliment you
It's
could
a
ever give someone.
So I got myself, Joe D'Amico, a history teacher, with Sean McVay and Gardner Minshew today. Lovely having you on the show.
What a team.
What a team. All right. I'll start with my out. Listen, I'm going to keep this one real simple. I alluded to this earlier. I'm just out on Tua, and it's not even many. I'm a big stat guy. Not even many stats that I'm using to back this up. I just don't have a good feeling about it. I'm just worried about one bad hit. And again, I mentioned this earlier. I think he is due for regression. His ADOT went through the roof, relied on the big plays. Sure, the big plays happen. That's fine. But there were some bad stretches last year. He's a guy that can go out, throw for 5 touchdowns week 1. I'm like, oh, crap. But you know what? I'm not trusting it. I'm worried about Tua. I'm not drafting him. For my in, I did a little bit of cheating here because I picked 2 guys, and I picked again, I'm bored, clearly. I picked a system here. This is the system. This is what you should do if you miss out on quarterback. You're going to take 2 guys a little bit later. One is a guy that I'm in on this year because he's a safe pick, Jared Goff. Going off at quarterback 16 right now. Last year, guys, finished at QB 10. 7th last year in passer rating, 6th in yards per attempt last year, only sacked 23 times. Guy gets rid of the ball fast. He's in control of his offense. Their line improved. I looked a lot into their offensive line. It's improved. One of the easiest schedules this year. Their defense, guys, tell me about their defense. Stinks.
Not
Terrible.
great. Not
They
great.
are going to be throwing. Got some decent weapons there. You got Williams when he comes back. You got Amon-Ra St. Brown. You got Gibbs in there. And from weeks 13 through 17 last year, when you really needed him, if you did, averaged almost 22 points, 21.9. So if you miss out, if you totally miss the boat, take him for safety. But to conclude our show, you're going to want to take this one guy for his upside, and it's Anthony Richardson, Tom.
Wow.
I know you didn't know I was going with this. I like him for his upside, going off of QB 18. Dude, he might be the most athletic human in NFL history. I mean, him, Bijan Robinson, sure, these prospects are insane. Listen, I think he's like the guy that is like Hurts the year before, and I know we're probably going to be a year off in our cycle here, but later in the year could be like a Hurts towards, one of those earlier points in his career when he started to really come out, right? Justin Fields last year, in Florida, I am a little bit worried. I think he only played 13 games in Florida, averaged 60 rush yards. So I think, to me, that floor is there. And if he could throw for close to 3,000 yards. Fields only threw for 2,200 last year, ran for 1,100 Fields. So let me just look at this real quick. Almost done, I promise. Fields last year passed for 2,200 yards, rushed for 1,100, 25 total touchdowns, finished as the QB6. That is not ridiculously out of the question to me for Richardson. I don't know. If he could throw for 2,500 yards, the rushing floor is there. Shane Steichen, the new Colts head coach. Tom, you know where he was the offensive coordinator for recently?
I sure do.
The Eagles. And
right.
He worked with Hurts. He think he's going to kind of work with Richardson, get him easy completions. I just like him. So that's my strategy. If I miss quarterback, I'm taking Goff to be safe, and then I'll take Richardson as the upside and stash him. All right. So to wrap up here, so Zach is in on Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy, and out on Kirk Cousins. Tom is in on Aaron Rodgers, out on Anthony Richardson. I'm in on Anthony Richardson and Jared Goff, kind of cheated, and I'm out on Tua. But that's it, guys. That wraps up our show. That was a hell of an awesome show. Zach, man, appreciate you joining us. Remember, you guys out there, give him a follow. He's at Hyduke Zachary, and you could go back to the beginning of our show. We talked about his podcast a little bit, but Zach, hope to have you back on soon, brother.
Thanks. Yeah, I was glad to be here. And yeah, I'm excited to see maybe we can be on back at some point and talk again.
Sounds great. And Tom, next is running backs.
We'll talk.
We will chat. All right. And for our loyal listeners, we thank you guys. If it was your first time, welcome. Hope you enjoyed the show. Until then, we are the Fantasy Injury Team. We'll see you guys next time.